Hello, Malene. I'm going to give you some feedback here on your assignment regarding the Afghan interpreter. Before I begin, just one kind of general note that I'd like you to remember for next time. Please line or number the lines in your future assignments, because I sometimes have to refer to specific places in the text. And it really helps if you have numbered the lines so that there's no confusion as to what I'm referring to. What's going to happen now is I'm going to go through the text on mostly the global level and also a little bit on the local level. You remember back to the lesson where you started this assignment. The global level of the text has to do with the structure and the cohesion, the links between the paragraphs, and how you kind of present the text as a whole. It also has to do with the individual paragraphs, and then moving into the local level, that's to do with individual words, sentences. So we're talking here about spelling, grammatical errors, things like that. So that's the two kind of main things I'm going to talk about. What I suggest you do is pause the video, find your text. There's a feedback folder on the Google Drive, and you'll find your text there, marked feedback, and you will be able to follow along. Pause it and go back and read if you need to throughout the video. So first of all, we talked about in class how you could address this issue, and you had some problems with the excerpt from The Guardian, and we talked about how you could kind of proceed with that. I'm not entirely sure that I understand what it is that you wanted to arrive at here. Your headline, "Who's the critic?" First of all, I'm not really sure what is meant by this. It appears from the headline that you want to make the Guardian article the main issue. When I read your introduction, you kind of have two strains. Is the UK Army neglecting or even failing? It's a stronger word, fail, than neglect, I think. The interpreters, or is the Guardian making too much of this? Is this a story that is just there to generate attention? So those are two good points, or that is a good point of departure, having that discussion, I think. It's always worth considering bias when we read articles. However, sometimes that discussion can get in the way of discussing the actual issue. And that, I think, is the case here. If you want to assess whether the Guardian is basically making a story out of something that's not really a story, you would have to then research. Are there other cases of interpreters getting into trouble and not being helped? You would have to figure out, are there other credible sources that brings this to the forefront? It could be human rights lawyers, it could be other newspapers writing about it. If you get enough information that would suggest, yes, this is a problem, because there's critical mass saying this is happening, we should be doing something, then maybe it's not to do with bias, maybe it's just news reporting. Bias is always there. I don't think there's a newspaper that's completely subjective. Completely objective. However, there's also the issue of how subjective is it? And if the bias is clear from the beginning, or if it's not getting in the way of the facts, then does it matter that there is some slight bias? I mean, we have to sort of balance those things. So that's the one thing. And then the other thing is the neglect or the failing of the interpreter. I think you should discuss this more than you do. As I see it, you have a structure that has to do with the refusal to comment on the issue. Why might that be? That paragraph needs revising, because I'm not really I think I know what you're saying, but it's not evident. and you need to make it evident for the reader what it is, how you connect the different points in that paragraph. I've written a comment there, so please go look at that. Then you talk about the bias in general in terms of the Guardian. You say, do the writer have a case? Should be, does the writer have a case? And then you go on to talk about, does the army have a problem? And I think those two could be written differently, or should perhaps be written with a different main effort, so that the main effort is on whether should be on your discussion on whether or not the army does have a problem when they don't want to comment. I don't think that the army would hesitate giving the Guardian a comment, because it is a reputable paper. It's not known for misrepresenting the truth. It's not known for big kind of splashy headlines, drama, exaggeration, or sort of creating conflict. It's not a tabloid. It's like Politiken in that respect. And then you sort of, your last paragraph is basically you're saying there is no winner here, because on the one hand you think the Guardian has failed to represent the case, on the other hand the Afghan interpreter is still left with no solution. And I think you need to consider, what is the core here? Is it the fact that that you find that the article may not be representing the case fairly, or is it that there is a case that is unresolved and there is a moral issue about our use of interpreters? So what I'd like you to consider here is how you balance the two sides, the representation and the failure to address the problem or the perceived problems of the Afghan interpreters. Outside of that, sort of content-wise, I think also work a little bit on linking your paragraphs. I've given you the YouTube link for the video that we saw in class regarding links between paragraphs. I'd like you to watch it again. I think what you can do is basically, after you've written your body text, go back and look and see how you can link them better. So it can be something, if you're not able to do it while you write, it's something you can do in your editing phase. So have a look at it and see if you can create some better links, because I think that would be really beneficial for the cohesion of the text. Also, I think go back in terms of creating I'm tempted to call it an outro instead of there's an intro and an outro if you're not concluding anything or a rounding off of the text. Have you answered the question that you posed in your introduction, do you think? Have you argued both sides? And then what can you say afterwards when you've discussed both sides? What could be your sort of summing up of that? Because you kind of leave us there hanging with, there is no winner here. Okay, maybe that's not completely believable. So make your ending stronger, basically. So that we feel that we've now left this issue and we can move on. Okay, so in terms of the global level, in summation, consider whether you have balanced the two sides of your argument and discussed it enough. Consider links between your paragraphs, consider your ending, and make that stronger. So that would be my 3 kind of points for you on the global level. On the local level, there are 2 things that I see that you need to work on. One is spelling, and the other is subject-verb agreement. I've marked those for you, and you can go and correct them. It's really important that you pay attention to those 2 things in your editing phase, or your proofreading phase, rather. Subject-verb agreement can be worked on quite easily, and there are so many pages online that help you train that. Det vi kalder kongruens på dansk. So it's just simply a question of getting a hang of the rules and then being able to recognize, okay, when is it that I need to pay attention to this? So it's basically being able to identify your verb and your subject, altså udsagnsled og grundled. If you can do that, you can check for those types of errors. If you want help with that, I can certainly give it to you. I've got loads of things for you to practice on if you want that, or you can find something online if you want to do that at home as well. It is very close to what I would call a systematic error. If it had been like every now and again, nearly everyone does it every now and again, you do it in a more systematic way. So that tells me that you haven't grasped that rule. So if we can just eliminate half of the errors that you make, that would be fine. I mean, you would be in a place where that would be fine. Yes. So have a look through the text in terms of your more local errors and correct them. Make a note of it if you don't understand what you're meant to do. We'll talk about it in class. We have the 2 last lessons set aside for reviewing these texts. So there's certainly time. And any other questions you may have, I can answer in that class as well. Okay, I think that is it for me. I will see you next week. Bye.